As you know, the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene will be delivering his budget speech today. Let's now cross live to Cape Town, where my colleague Francis Head is standing by with economist Johan Els to discuss the implications of that speech.
Thank you so much, Elvis. As you said, we're coming to you live from our studio just outside of Parliament. We've been watching Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene has arrived, and he was flanked by none other than Pravin Gordhan, the previous Finance Minister. Now, Pravin was able to be Mr. Popular. If you look back, what we've had over the last few years, since about 95, is substantial tax relief. But because of where we are, because of the debt, because of low growth, what many are expecting is that Nhlanhla Nene today is going to have to announce something of an austerity budget, maybe even raising our taxes. Let's get some more insight into what we can expect. I'm joined by, as you said, Johan Els from Old Mutual. Great to have you with us,
Hi, good morning.
Johan. So are we going to have to tax the rich? That's a big speculation, to help feed the poor.
Well, yes. As the Minister said in his October medium-term budget policy statement, which was his first then as well, time for fiscal consolidation is here and we can't delay it any longer. So after the 2008 financial crisis, our budget deficit exploded and it stayed big for some time. And then the ratings agencies started getting worried about that. So this need for fiscal consolidation comes off that ratings agency
so what
pressure.
you're talking about is bringing down our debt, basically. We can't take on too much debt. It's getting dangerous.
It's getting dangerous because the interest payments on that debt is starting to rise again. Already 10-11% of total expenditure is going on interest payments. So that drives out other spending.
So what taxes will he implement, possibly?
Well, I think it's going to be a mix of taxes, but as you suggested, mostly at the upper end. So maybe another top marginal rate increase, maybe higher capital gains taxes, maybe even an increase in the dividend taxes. So as you can see, it's mostly on the upper end. The rich will pay, as you say, but there might be some other tax increases as well. Maybe a bigger fuel levy increase than we've seen for the last few years, because with the lower petrol price, that's a possibility.
That's dangerous in itself, isn't it? Because the oil price could start going up again, and then we're lumped with this extra tax that does affect, I guess whatever he does, it affects somebody, but everybody driving a taxi even.
Yes, sure, that is a risk. We think the oil price will be remaining low for longer, but that is certainly a risk. If it starts rising, we'll pay more. Already there's a petrol price increase on the cards for March. If he raises the fuel levy, another increase in April. But then the consumer this year is going to be much better off than it was in the past few years, given that substantial fall in the petrol price already. So overall, the economy is going to perform better. The consumer will get the benefit, despite some tax increases. Remember, the tax increases he's targeting of 12 billion is only 1% of the total tax revenue tax. So it's small. It won't hurt the overall consumer too much. And the bulk of that aimed at the higher income groups. So the lower middle income consumer will likely not be hurt too much.
Okay, so we are going for those high earners.
Yes.
Is it going to be big enough to count as what people have been talking about, a super tax on the wealth, a wealth tax?
Maybe you can call it a wealth tax. I don't think it's going to be that significant. Maybe, let's say, if he goes for lifting the top marginal rate from 40 to 42%. On everybody earning more than 1 million per year. Yeah. That'll give him about 5 billion. So it's not enough in terms of what he needs for this year. That's why I say it might be a mix of other taxes as well, and some indirect taxes. And VAT is still a speculation. Will he or won't he? I think the ratings agencies, the investors, will really like it if he goes for a VAT increase as well. It might hurt the poor more, but then he's got the option of taking some of that extra revenue that he will get from VAT and provide that for the poor in terms of food programs or bigger social grant increases or something.
But like you say, it will be unpalatable because the poor spend a bigger proportion of their income on basic foods and things
that
like
is
that.
Very true. But
and they will be hit by that.
Yes, lots of the fresh foodstuffs already zero rated, and you can expand that list somewhat. Okay. So there are ways that you can alleviate that pressure on the poor.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. But in terms of an overall perception of South Africa as a destination to invest, we will all benefit if taxes are raised. So yeah, you and me will pay a little bit more taxes. Some people will be hurt a bit. There's some alleviations programs that can happen. But if fiscal policy is fantastic and maybe even slightly better than what he suggested in October last year, so getting the deficit lower, impacting our debt levels. That is good for the rand, that's good for overall economic outlook, for sentiment, etc. So I think a little bit of pain will go a long way in improving the overall outlook for this year.
What about the alternative view that if you target the rich, maybe it's a good thing. We have huge inequality. We like progressive taxes because the rich have more disposable income. But there is a concern that you then discourage a bit of investment. You discourage entrepreneurs. You discourage the Mark Shuttleworths of the world.
Yes, no, certainly. So we should be fairly slow in that process. That's why I don't like the word super tax on the rich or wealth tax. I don't think they will want to do that and hurt the rich so much. Yes, the rich will pay their proportion more of taxes, but it won't be a huge increase because of exactly that potential negative impact on investment and entrepreneurship in this economy.
Okay, let's come back to the poor now, because we know that for years Pravin Gordhan was able to extend those social grants that have been a lifeline for millions of South Africans. Can we continue to provide this buffer to people who need it?
No, it's been a fantastic program, and the World Bank had fantastic studies in terms of the positive impacts of that whole program, but it's a huge drain on the fiscal situation. So we can't afford to continue to expand that base and spend more and more. It's already 10% of total government spending. If you add other big components like interest payments on the debt, the social grants and the wage bill, we're talking 55% of total government spending. And that's what the ratings agencies have been saying. This can't continue because it drives out other potential spending areas. So yeah, it's those three, but social grants can't continue. It's done its positive
so
impact.
Will they go up a little bit?
I think they will go up by inflation.
Stabilize.
To not expand the program in terms of getting new beneficiaries into the program and keep the rate of increase fairly low, just around inflation numbers.
Johanna, isn't there an underlying sad situation here that because we had years where we did take a strong stance and we said we're going to take on debt, we're still going to spend, we're going to get this economy going, even though things were tight and we saw a recession and things like that. But why did that not boost our economy as expected?
Well, it's one of those things, almost like the quantitative easing in the US. It's very difficult to measure what it would have been if policy had been different, if we hadn't done it. So it's very difficult to measure that. So it had a positive impact, and maybe not to the extent we wanted. So that's why we have to make sure that all our policies are in line with what foreign investors want. We must remember we're a small and very open economy, so we're so dependent on those foreign investors and what they think. So the ratings agencies, the IMF, the World Bank, and the foreign investors who come and invest here, they determine what will happen to this economy. So if policy is healthy, we will be okay.
Should we pander to those foreign investors? Kasatu is saying, no, we need to have something that transforms this economy. We need something radical.
We've got no choice. We as a nation, we're not saving enough. So all those deficits, our current account deficit, in other words, we import far more than we export. That's 200 billion rand per year. We're not saving enough locally to finance that. The same as if I don't save enough and I have to go to the bank manager. Bank manager says, sorry, won't give you any more credit. Foreign investors won't give us credit. They are the only ones that can help us. We're not saving enough. So those deficits need to be financed by them. So they need to be pacified and they need to be happy with policy. We've got no choice.
This brings us to Eskom, because we don't have the funds. Government doesn't seem to have this huge injection that Eskom needs. Eskom certainly doesn't have it. It keeps on asking for more money. 23 billion. It's believed that Nhlanhla Nene will outline how that help will be defined and given today. But Eskom needs so much more. Where's it going to come from?
Well, in terms of government's financing of Eskom, fortunately, and that was one of the very positive aspects of his October statement, was they will finance that in a deficit neutral way. In other words, you and I won't have to pay more taxes to finance that. They're going to sell off assets to finance that. And they'll probably say today which ones. Is it Telkom, is it Vodacom shares? What will he use to finance Eskom. The more financing that Eskom needs will probably have to come from foreign investors, and maybe even a breakup of Eskom itself. So those are part of the positive things that we saw in the October statement, where government also allowed or said they'll allow private sector investment to build a coal-fired power station. So there were lots of positives in terms of what foreign investors' perception is in terms of policy in South Africa. So overall, I think it'll be a very positive statement in terms of the economy-wide sentiment that we need to improve.
So we will hear about privatization aspects creeping in into these utilities that have been protected for years, but nothing radical, I suspect.
Nothing radical, it's step by step, but also they won't call it that word, privatization. It'll be called selling off of state assets, but allowing private sector more access into those companies. And also the State of the Nation address, if you read through it, lots more positives in terms of getting private sector participation. It was actually friendly towards the private sector, because I think government realizes they cannot go it alone. They need the expertise of the private sector.
Final question. Is nuclear energy the big elephant in the room? Because we're not making allocations for it yet, but it will, when it comes, seemingly blow the budget. It's as big as our budget, a trillion rand we're talking about for nuclear power
I think
stations.
that's where there's lots of hesitation from Treasury side to start including it in the budget. They've got other priorities. The National Health Insurance Scheme, for instance, will also cost billions. So any nuclear scheme will probably have to come with some financing from offshore as well. So the people who build it, whether it's, I don't know which country, China or Russia or whoever, will probably need to finance it as well and then sell the electricity back to the country. So I think that's part of the scheme. That's why we probably won't see it in the budgets.
Okay,
because it's too big, there's other priorities.
So something for future years. Thank you so much for your analysis. That was Johan Els, economist from Old Mutual. And we'll be bringing you the budget speech blow by blow today here from Parliament. We'll check in a little later.